The Doctor has faced a great deal of terrifying foes throughout their travels. Given the vast expanse of all of time and space, it's incredibly surprising when the Doctor bumps into those foes again. Looking through the prism of a long-running television drama that has to attract audiences, it becomes a lot clearer as to why big hitters like the Daleks, Cybermen and the Master all regularly return to ruin the Doctor's day. The Daleks practically secured Doctor Who's longevity the minute they waved a sucker arm in Barbara's face way back in 1963. And writers and showrunners repeatedly return to the Daleks nearly 6 decades later. Some monsters and villains don't get as lucky as the Daleks and the Master, however. It's not for lack of trying. The Sea Devils, for example, were a huge part of the cultural memory of 1970s Doctor Who. The Zygons from 1975's Tom Baker serial captured the imagination of a young David Tennant, but they didn't return to the series until 2013. And then there are monsters even unluckier than that, those who are clearly brilliant, but have to date never returned to the TV series. So with that in mind then, I'm Ellie with Who Culture, here with 10 Doctor Who villains you're surprised only appeared once. Number 10. FENRIC. FENRIC and the Doctor have a long history with each other. First appearing in the 7th Doctor classic The Curse of FENRIC, he was the original evil from the dawn of time. An earlier incarnation of the Doctor and FENRIC first met in 3rd century Constantinople, where the Doctor defeated the intelligence in a game of chess and imprisoned him in a flask. From his prison, FENRIC manipulated the 7th Doctor's timeline in order to free himself from his prison. The Doctor and Ace eventually defeated FENRIC once more, but the old evil played a big role in the 7th Doctor's Big Finish series of audios. FENRIC was intrinsically linked to the legendary Cartmel master plan that would suggest the Doctor was more than a Time Lord. With that in mind, it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility for FENRIC to have been defeated by Joe Martin's fugitive Doctor in the employ of Division, or by another of the Timeless Doctors. Whichever Doctor defeated him first, it's surely time for another rematch. If only so the Doctor's last important chess game wasn't that awful one from Nightmare in Silver. Number 9. Eternals. Enlightenment is one of the best Peter Davison serials. Taking place during an intergalactic yacht race, it introduces the Eternals as godlike beings that play games with dispensable human pawns for prizes. The Doctor is rightly horrified, and his confrontation with Stryker gives Davison some of his best material in the role. The Eternals have been mentioned in passing throughout the new series, but haven't yet made a return, or at least not explicitly. In the 13th Doctor adventure Can You Hear Me, the TARDIS team come up against Zellin, who can manifest people's fears and do weird things with his fingers. He tricks the Doctor into freeing his lover Rakaya, but is of course eventually defeated. While not explicitly referenced as Eternals on screen, a tie-in story entitled The Guide to the Dark Times was published in the official Doctor Who Annual 2021. Written by River Song, it outlines the history of the mythical Dark Times and suggests that Zellin and Rakaya were Eternals. Regardless of whether this was the intention of the original script, a Doctor Who story that tackles gods who treat human beings as toys would be fantastic. I mean, it's a regular fallback plot across the Star Trek series, so isn't it about time that the Doctor had their own Q? Number 8. Scarrison. The Zygons finally returned to Doctor Who in the 2010s, but when they did, their pet Scarrison was nowhere to be found. In their original story, Terror of the Zygons, this terrifying creature was key to the story. The Scarrison was revealed to be the actual Loch Ness Monster, and the Zygons themselves survived on the creature's milk. Loch Ness Monster milk, a product that even the Scottish Tourist Board wouldn't even consider marketing. The realization of the Scarrison on screen was one of those notoriously ropey Doctor Who monsters, so it's perhaps unsurprising that the Scarrison hasn't yet made an appearance in the new series. After all, it hardly fits with the Zygon inversion's political allegory of terrorism and immigration. However, if Legend of the Sea Devils can reinvent the Merca as a terrifying sea creature, then they can do the same for the Scarrison. Perhaps a period adventure set around the time of the first Nessie sighting, where curious scientists accidentally awaken the Zygons under the loch a few decades early. Scotland is all too rarely visited in Doctor Who, so it is about time that it paid Nessie the Scarrison a visit. Number 7. The AXONS. The John Pertwee serial The Claws of Axos is a bit of an underrated classic. It's the first story by Bob Baker and Dave Martin, who would go on to co-create K9 and tackle some very timely concerns around energy. With the world facing an energy crisis, alien visitors land in the English home counties to offer clean, renewable energy to humanity. Of course, their gift comes at a price, and soon the Doctor has to team up with the Master to avert their dastardly plans, trapping them inside a time loop. The AXONS are still stuck in that time loop on screen, though they've occasionally escaped to wreak havoc in 2 Big Finish audios, the second of which is to be released later this year. As humanity continues to discuss the financial and environmental costs of fuel, surely the AXONS are primed for a comeback. It would surely be a foolish endeavour for the AXONS to try the same grift twice, but humanity's never been great at learning from their history. It would take the Doctor to pop in and save us from our own errors once more. They're an incredibly striking looking creation though, sort of psychedelic golden gods. Their true form, all orange tendrils, would later be repainted to become crinoids, but more on those later. Number 6. Gods of Ragnarok. In The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, the Doctor and Ace visit the Psychic Circus, which has been taken over by the ancient gods of Ragnarok. These ancient beings crave entertainment and wear those in their employ down, demanding endless entertainment and new and more exciting and thrilling acts each time. The gods were clearly a metaphor for those higher up in the BBC at the time, when Doctor Who was on the way out. However, from a contemporary perspective, aren't they also a metaphor for the endless stream of TV talent shows? It's so crazy that during Russell T Davies' first era, when Doctor Who was regularly pitted against shows like Britain's Got Talent and The X Factor, that he never considered writing a satire of those shows. Given how willing everyone was to play along with the reality show satire in Doctor Who's very first season, it's strange that they never attempted it. But then maybe that's why, the worry that to have a Greatest Show in the Galaxy sequel would be too similar to Bad Wolf. So it's a good job RTD's coming back then. Number 5. Rutans. The Sontarans' mortal enemies may look like balls of snot, but they're deadly shapeshifters with plenty of unrealised potential. While they've been name-checked in the new series, they've never actually appeared in an episode. However, they have appeared in multiple comic strips, novels, fan films, and even video games. It's perhaps the Rutans' jellyfish-like appearance that has barred them from returning to the series after the horror of Fang Rock. How to effectively realise their appearance without being totally embarrassing probably makes Doctor Who's practical and visual effects team wake up in a cold sweat. However, the Rutans are shapeshifters. The horror of Fang Rock is essentially John Carpenter's The Thing in a lighthouse. No one's sure who's who as this deadly alien works their murderous way through the inhabitants of the lighthouse as they assess the strategic importance of planet Earth. While the Zygon invasion/inversion has already done the shape-shifting political thriller, there's surely plenty of scope for another shapeshifter story in modern Doctor Who. Or perhaps given Flux's epic space battles, the time is right to finally see what a Sontaran and Rutan war actually looks like. Number 4. The WIRRN. Stephen Moffat and Russell T Davies have both sang the praises of the Ark in Space over the years, so it's odd that there's never been a sequel. Perhaps they felt the pressure of following a story that has such a lauded position in the canon. It's a shame because the WIRRN are suitably horrifying creations that could be realised to great effect with modern visual effects. The WIRRN are human-sized insect creatures that breed by using cattle species to grow their eggs. In the Ark in Space, this is the crew of the Nerva Beacon, and is portrayed to horrifying effect with some of the most creative use of green bubble wrap that you'll ever see. It's so effective that a recent Bruce Willis film called Breach has practically the same plot, but couldn't come close to matching the horror, despite the slightly more advanced effects work and a higher age rating. Maybe this is key to why the WIRRN haven't yet returned to the series, as any Doctor Who production team is wary of recreating the alchemy of those early Tom Baker stories. Regardless, these creepy crawlies are long overdue a return. Number 3. SUTEKH. Everyone forgets that the 4th episode is actually a bit rubbish, but Pyramids of Mars is a stone-cold Doctor Who classic. It pits the Doctor against an Egyptian god imprisoned on Mars and introduces the Osirans, godlike aliens in the Doctor Who universe. There had been demonic aliens introduced in the 3rd Doctor era, but here was the show tackling the gods themselves. SUTEKH has never returned to the TV series, but one of his relations travelled with the 10th Doctor in the comics. Gabriel Wolfe, who played SUTEKH in Pyramids of Mars, has returned to the series, playing the voice of the Beast in the Impossible Planet/the Satan Pit. To date, however, no SUTEKH. Having the Doctor take on an Egyptian god would be an epic season finale, so it's strange that it's not happened yet. Now that the MCU is making Egyptology cool again with their Moon Knight series, maybe the 14th Doctor will be taking on the Osirans in a future episode. It would certainly push the show in a much needed new direction, away from the alien invasion plots that have become overly familiar. Number 2. The Dream Lord. Arguably, the Dream Lord is the Valeyard, the embodiment of the Doctor's worst impulses. However, his genesis is different, the product of spores that find their way into the TARDIS systems. The Dark Doctor is an incredibly compelling concept, so much so that the Matt Smith era tried it again with much less success in Neil Gaiman's difficult second story Nightmare in Silver. It's odd that the Dream Lord hasn't returned in the series. There certainly appeared to be unfinished business at the end of Amy's Choice. The availability of Toby Jones needn't be a problem either, as you could have a different Dream Lord for each Doctor actor. We've had opportunities for the Doctor actors to play darker versions of themselves over the years since Amy's Choice, but nothing that's captured the Doctor's self-loathing and anxiety. It's strange that a story like Can You Hear Me, which was all about mental health, didn't reintroduce the Dream Lord as the embodiment of the Doctor's own anxieties and mental health concerns. Perhaps the introduction of the fugitive Doctor put paid to that idea, so for now the Dream Lord is still out there, waiting. Number 1. The Krynoid. The Seeds of Doom is an absolute cracker of a Tom Baker story. It begins by riffing on The Thing from Another World long before John Carpenter and Kurt Russell did to great acclaim in 1982. After the Doctor and Sarah's Antarctic sojourn, they returned to the UK to stop unhinged millionaire Harrison Chase from playing in his Green Cathedral and unleashing the terrifying Krynoid upon the world. The Krynoid are a great creation by Zygon creator Robert Banks Stewart, carnivorous plant life that consume animal life. Their pods can transform other beings into plant life too, prompting the Doctor to recall that on planets where the Krynoid take root, all animal life cease to exist. The Krynoid have dug their tendrils into various bits of Doctor Who spin-off media, but haven't yet returned to the series. As plant-based diets have become increasingly popular in recent years, and with the return of Russell T Davies to the show, the time is surely right for a Krynoid return. It's in RTD's wheelhouse to use an old Doctor Who monster to comment on our contemporary society, and a story about plants that eat humans feels relevant at a time where we're all questioning our impact on nature. And that concludes our list. If you have any other suggestions, then do let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there at Who Culture, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with Who Culture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.